Welcome to the Excellence at Work podcast, where we explore the strategies and best practices that drive business success. I'm Rachel Cook, COO of Brandon Hall Group and the host of our podcast, along with members of our executive team. In each episode, we'll dive into the latest trends, insights, and real-world examples from some of the most exciting leaders from organizations worldwide. Be part of our journey and learn from the best as we discuss innovative approaches and cutting-edge technologies for talent management, learning and development, leadership, diversity and inclusion, and more.
Thanks for joining us today on this episode of Brandon Hall Group's Excellence at Work podcast. I'm your host, David Wentworth. I'm the Managing Director for Learning and Talent here at Brandon Hall Group. And I am joined by Mahesh Kumar, who is the founder and Managing Director for TraineryHCM. Hello, Mahesh.
Hello. Good afternoon, David. Thank you for this invite. I look forward to this exciting podcast.
Yeah, we're really happy to have you back. I know we've talked before about other things. I think we're going to put a little bit of a twist on things today. You know, we here at Brandon Hall Group, we spend a lot of time talking about, excellence and great examples of how companies are doing things, such amazing things with talent, whether it's through our awards or papers or webinars. We really like to highlight those success stories. But I think just as important is to acknowledge some of talent's greatest misses. Companies have to be able to recognize the mistakes that they're making and maybe some of the traps that they've fallen into if they ever want to become one of those companies that are shining examples of doing things really well. So in talking to Mahesh, I thought this was a great opportunity because he's got all these years of experience, talking to companies, working with companies, and has kind of curated a list of some of the biggest and most common mistakes that you've seen over the years. So I think it's great that you're here to do this. It's important work. And I think we should just go through these one by one. Maybe we can understand what the mistakes are, why they persist, and maybe how to break free from them.
Sure. Yes, let's go for it.
All right, awesome. So starting off at the top, and we see this a lot in a lot of different areas, but we look at things like job descriptions. And I know this is a real challenge now as companies become very focused on skills and capabilities. And what does that translate into, what jobs look like? But one of the things holding them back is they tend to treat those job descriptions like a historical document, right? You put the effort in, you create it, and then no one ever looks at it again.
Exactly.
What's been your experience with that?
Yeah, I'm glad we are talking about job description as the first mistake, right? The job description is the most important component of hiring a person into the organization. I come from two different perspectives. One is we have done consulting projects for the last 15, 20 years. And one of the common problems we have seen with our clients has been the job description. Many times it is stale. And the common thread, as you said, David, is employees always say, no, the job description is an old one. What I do now is different from what is in the job description. The problem is, it causes a lot of downstream damage as time goes on, right? Nobody ever can trace back to the problem as to what is the source of this problem. Because you start off with a job description to hire somebody into the organization. You set the performance standard, you set the pay range and training and everything to do with the job description. But the job has evolved over a period of time and the job description doesn't keep pace with it. It's just because it's very difficult for any organization to do it. And that is why job description always lags behind what the job is. So if the foundation is wrong, everything you built on is going to be wrong, right? So that is one of the problems that's been a common thread that we have seen. If you take the skill as another bucket or a component into it, that gets even more critical. The job description must be current, but historically the facts are that it's not current, and organizations are struggling to manage that function. With the AI tools, regulatory shift, and all that, it's even more important today than ever before. So this is a very important function, but it's not given enough credit. And managers also find it difficult to keep track of this. Training people on competencies or building their career plan, building the career path, all depends on where you start, and where you start is different from where the employees are, and there is no matching. So I'll give you a simple number that I got from Schromm a couple of months back, right? Only 42% of HR leaders say the job description accurately reflects the role requirement. That's a very alarming number, right? If you think about it, people saying that for more than 50% of the employees in that organization have job functions or what they do today that's very different from what that job description says. So it costs a lot of money to hire a wrong person too, but it's a very important function. It's a evergreen problem. It's always been there with the HR organization.
Yeah. Well, and especially when companies start to think about skills and capabilities and rethinking that, and how do we, build the right skills and not necessarily do it by jobs. The first step they take is they look at job descriptions and use that to inform their skills and capabilities, right? And so if that stuff's out of date or wrong or on the wrong target, it just is all built on that.
Exactly. Yeah. And they don't start with a good architecture. It's not a glamorous topic, right? Job descriptions is not glamour. There's no glamour in it. It is a boring function. And you combine that with the job architecture, it's not glamour at all, but it is the foundation. So that's a very important topic. Mm-hmm. It's been an ongoing problem in the HR space for quite some time now.
Yeah, I think we have to get much more dynamic and fluid with the job descriptions like we are with the skills and capabilities matrices that companies are working through. Yes. One of the things you brought up in that response is you talked about, setting those performance standards. And I think that's another area that companies just it's like quicksand. They're just locked into this performance management mindset of it's the annual performance review. I can't believe it's 2026 and we're still talking about this. I mean, for as long as I can remember as an analyst in this space, we've been talking about moving away from that and trying to get more strategic, but that still is sort of the most common denominator in the performance world, right, is the annual performance review. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. I think generally what we are doing is we are confusing a document with a discipline, right? The annual review is a documentation event. It captures what happened in the prior year, and performance management is something completely different. It's an ongoing conversation, coaching, correcting people's, issues or whatever the case may be. If it happens every week or every month, or, you go to a Starbucks for a coffee discussion, if that happens, that's very different from having it as an annual performance review. What's happening is we are taking that annual event into play, and we are forgetting the fact that the performance could have been tracked much earlier, much better job could have been done. And that is one of the reasons why the annual performance review is not the way to go forward in today's world, especially with things that are changing so dramatically. The annual performance review is just one milestone for your annual compensation review and all that, but that is not the case. There's an interesting research that actually you folks have come up with, right? I found in one of the researches said 8% of companies say that performance management drive high value. So the annual performance management. So it means that it is more of a ritual that many people don't want to go through, but they have to go through because it's important.
Yeah. It's been locked into so many other things, right? It's been tied to, like you mentioned, the raise. It's almost become a whole performative ritual, like you say. In order to justify a raise or not, we have to have this performance event. And there's the real value isn't even there anymore. It's just a thing to justify whether or not there's some sort of compensation increase.
Yes. The way we see it is like, the discussion between a manager and an employee, if there is any surprise to either party, then that performance management process is not exactly where it should be. Employees should be fully aware even before they go into this annual ritual, because they have had multiple conversations. They know where they are, what they must be working on. And so there must be enough communication between manager and the employee. And the annual performance documentation is to get through the annual process for your other pieces, but it must be a continuous process. It's also very difficult to manage for an organization, right? So the challenge is between, okay, I need to do something, so they come up with annual, but the way in which things have changed and the way the expectation of employees have changed, the process is kind of broken. And it is clear, right? I've noticed it in my own life, and it's very much a ritual process. The fact that, Gallup once said only 14% of employees actually agree with their performance review documentation. So it just kind of is a stunning number to say employees don't believe what they read at the end of the year is very different from what they thought. And that means that 86% of the employees do not agree that the year-end documentation correctly reflects their performance that year. So that's a stunning number. So that's a big problem. And we do it as an annual review because it is a lot of effort for organizational culture to change to make it continuous performance management. So it's a big deal.
Yeah, change is where the effort is. I mean, if you are locked into this, if you are, you get out of that annual ritual and it becomes more continuous, it actually becomes easier because there's not as much time invested. It's ongoing, there isn't so much weight added to this time period. So it actually is, it's the cultural change though. It's like I said, there's so many things built around this traditional process.
Yes. Yes. And there's a cultural change, and then there's a technology solution that is also required, right? So let's say you are in Starbucks, you guys are really reviewing the performance of, and a manager and the employee are reviewing. How can that conversation be documented, be part of the review process? Now, it doesn't have to be sitting in a conference room and doing it. It's more of in between coffee break, right? If these things can be done in a more informal plus formal way and have a culture of continuous feedback, that will achieve lots of ideal goal that every organization might have. So they can do it. It's just that culturally, it's very difficult for many organizations to change. That's the problem.
Sure. All right. So that's the number 2. We're going into the third, which is now obviously these are going to all be somewhat interrelated, right? But you talk about the performance management process and what gets rewarded and why. And what's interesting is we've identified mistake number 3 being rewarding results while ignoring behaviors. And it's interesting because the first half of that, rewarding results, of course, isn't that what this is all about, right? We're all about outcomes. We're all about rewarding results. So when we say, but doing that while ignoring behaviors is a mistake, what do you mean by that?
So this is where organizations end up with a culture problem and they have no idea. They built it themselves, right? Compensation is the most honest signal a company can send to the employee at the end of the year or whatever the frequency is. What happens is the reward structure is sometimes not connected to the employee's behavior, employee's performance. And so sometimes the reward structure is not connected. And like many times it's because of various factors that go in. If you reward results without regard for how people achieve them, you're basically rewarding the behavior that will eventually break your organization. So, how are you rewarding your employees? Like, if you have your sales rep or someone who is violating some of the norms that is part of the organization, or the right thing to do, but they're still making the number. Because they are making the number, if you're rewarding and you forget the fact that there are certain attributes that must be part of the process, then you are building a reward structure where you are ignoring how they got the number, but you're just rewarding them for just because they got the number. Coming from Wall Street, anecdotally, I can say that was the culture in the street, right? Like, if you make your number, you get it. And like how you make the number is not something that is questioned until it becomes an issue. Until then, there's never a question, right? So that created this whole culture in the street, and like things have improved now a bit, but still, if you're going to reward just because somebody hits the number or somebody does something that you want, then you have not realized that they got there, but how did they get there? So these two processes have to go together, but many times it doesn't, especially in an environment where you want to hit the numbers, and that creates a big problem culturally, and that really comes back and hurts the company badly. We have so many anecdotal evidence of companies paying price for doing employees not going through the right behavior. Yeah. And that is a big, big problem for organizations, especially if you don't have the right culture.
Right. I mean, and I can give an example of, of what this would look like. And again, this is, almost a comical answer, but it's very black and white. But think about a call center, and you're training your call center. And if the outcome is, well, we know what makes customers happy is if they have shorter call times. Right? We want the call center because then the call center can take more calls. So shorter call times is a metric that many, many call centers use. Now, I can have the shortest call times in the whole company by picking up the phone and hanging it up.
Hang it up. Mm-hmm.
Pick it up, hang up, or say nope. And all of a sudden my call time metric is through the roof. But how am I getting there? What's happening because of it, right? It's really important. And then, you mentioned too, I think it's applicable very much in like a sales environment. If a company has decided, look, we need to shift fundamentally how we look at sales, the approach our salespeople are taking, the strategies they use. It's a difficult ask sometimes, and you can put people through the training, but at the end of the day, they're interested in getting their numbers, and salespeople will often fall back to what's familiar. And they'll do it the way they've been doing it because they know they have some level of success. So
Yes.
it's very hard. Are they actually exhibiting the behaviors that you want? And it is, and very often it goes beyond just their numbers, right? If the behavior is supposed to be changing so that you create, happier, it isn't just closing the customer, but then they're happier, they're more long-term, they're more apt to buy more in the future, all of these things because of the behavior. And if all we're focused on is the outcome, you can short circuit the system very quickly.
Yes, David, you raised some of the points, right? They are not measured, right? The retention of the client, longevity of your client and all that. They are not able to measure. They measure only one attribute. And that is one of the reasons why they measure the wrong attribute. Not necessarily wrong, but more of like, call center example. Okay, how many calls you took is an example of a metric that's going to come back and haunt you, because the call center guy can have excellent performance from that metric standpoint at the cost of everything else. So that's why it's a challenge that organization has to come back and say, what is the metric they want to use? Not necessarily just one. There could be more than one for them to. And also the behavior, what kind of behavior they are rewarding. That's a very important component here.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. When we were talking about performance management, you brought up the technology aspect of it. And this is a huge challenge for a lot of companies beyond just performance management, obviously, much broader in the whole HCM spectrum. And companies easily fall into this trap. And it's a trap that just keeps getting deeper the more you stay there. And it's the idea of buying just more software instead of really being able to leverage what you have, or seeing how you can leverage what you have and then connecting on your various tools. What have you seen over the years? And of course, being a software provider, if they're going to buy your software, you're probably happy they buy more. But ultimately, more software is not always the answer.
Yes. I'm glad we are talking about this, right? In fact, I've read your research, your Brandon Hall research that says 22% of the organizations actually have HR technology that they think are integrated. That says a lot, right? It's a massive 78% that they have that they don't have anything that's integrated. There is another research by Gartner that comes up with a similar number, right? So they're saying around, say, between 70 and 80% of the organizations think that their HR is not integrated at all. So you are buying more HR software instead of connecting it. This is an evolution of things that has happened over time. So what happens is you start off with a best of breed, assuming it's a best of breed, it turns into kind of a best of chaos, right? So that's what has happened in the HR technology over the last 15 years. And most organizations are living with the consequence of their decisions they have made. And now that they are deep into that architecture, that process, they haven't integrated, it is a problem. So it's not just the HR problem. To be fair, this kind of like buying an isolated best of breed and not integrating is in many aspects of corporate America, not necessarily HR, but HR is one of the things that is also not connected. And so that is the problem. So I read somewhere there are some 11 HR technology solutions generally organizations have. Every single one of them was purchased to solve a real problem. There's no question about it, right? They really bought it because they want to solve the problem. And I also take it for granted that it does solve that problem. Whether it solves the problem organizationally as together, that is not the case. So what's happening is it is individually solving that problem. It is not connecting the whole connectivity tissue that is part of the HR architecture, right? That doesn't happen. And because technology was bought over time, and each one did something better than something else, and they had a homegrown system they want to replace. There are lots of issues every organization has, and they want to solve that problem right then and there. They do not have the funding, or they do not have the process in place to really integrate the technology. So that actually leads to each of those HR technologies stand alone, and they're not talking to each other. Mm-hmm. So it's a big problem. Sorry.
No, it's always blown me away. Like you talk about the number of HCM technologies in a company, having spent my career in learning and development, you sometimes talk to companies that got 2, 3, 4, 5 LMSs alone in-house. And that's, for over the course of acquisitions and mergers, what have you. And I think in today's current environment, and let's be, honest about it, there's a lot of turnover in the HCM world and amongst companies. But a lot of times the aftermath of the turnover, what people don't look at is the technology that was put in place by people that are no longer there. And I don't mean that the technology shouldn't be there anymore. It's just that there's no more ownership. There's no more accountability for it. There's no one actually can understand, well, I don't remember why we had this and what was going on, because the people who were responsible in that chain maybe aren't there. So it's really important to sort of take an inventory. Like, what do I have, first of all? And how much of it, when you talk about these homegrown solutions, we see this all the time. Like, oh, we've got this and this and this. We can, tape them together and make this other thing. This leads to problems down the road as more workarounds get built on top of more workarounds. And then the person that created the workaround isn't there anymore. So yeah, this idea that it's almost self-fulfilling. As complicated as this technology environment gets, it's so complicated that when a new challenge arises, companies feel like it's just easier to find yet another piece of technology to try to solve them.
Exactly. Yeah, Band-Aid after Band-Aid after Band-Aid rather than to break it open. It's also because there is no funding. Many times what happens is there's not enough funding for them to look at it architecturally, see what is the right thing to do, how do we go about on doing it. And so sometimes that costs as much as the software itself. And so they don't have enough budget. So they squeeze something, right? So they want to solve today's problem with something that might be the latest in the toolkit. So they just buy that, not realizing that they have added complexity to that, right? Because every integration is a failure point, right? That's how anytime there is integration between two applications, it's a failure possibility. Maintenance cost and all that. So it just never gets into the thought process at the beginning when they buy. Now they bought it, they want to use it because they bought it. And now you have environment where that software has its own life without people fully understanding why they bought it, whether there's an ROI for them in this process. So that is a big problem.
Yeah, ultimately more technology is not always the answer. It's, and I say this all the time in the past, is that if you're having any kind of challenges, if you've got like data problems, process problems, technology won't fix those. It'll just make those things happen at a larger scale and faster, right? So whatever problems you're having, if you don't address the core issue, technology will not fix it for you.
Yes.
So, it's important to really understand what technologies you have and why. And, you talk about this, the funding and the budgets. Yeah, that's a big challenge. But if you start to realize, oh, I don't need these 4 things, suddenly you're starting to free up some of that budget and to be able to apply it in the right way. All right, let's move on to the next mistake. And this is sort of a big picture mistake. And again, here we are, 2026. I'm amazed I'm about to say this, but the one size fits all training. We still do it. We still train everybody in the organization. We still deliver learning as if it's all one and the same.
Yes. As a software provider on this training, we are aware of this. And the reason for that is multifold, right? One is if the organization says, okay, employee XYZ, you're going to get the 10 courses we bought on bulk, and that's what you're going to get. Everybody gets the same set of courses, not realizing the career expectation, the desire to go to a different job or learn different skills are kind of lost in the translation. And all that they do is they just check the box. Okay, we did the training. This is a very common problem. That's because that organizations are finding it difficult to calibrate the requirement for training and put them in different bucket and solve the problem in a way that, okay, the finance guy and the technology guy or finance guy and HR guy are not going to be in need of the same set of courses because their background is different and the career path is different. Also, the second flavor is a first-year analyst or a first-year employee and a guy who has been there 15 years in the same company or was at a higher level, they don't have the same skill type. Right? And they don't need the same set of training. The organizations find it very difficult to think that way, and they are struggling to find the right content and the right toolkit and the right solutions that they can build on so that everybody can have their own set of content, right? So it is they are trying to check the box, and for you to check the box, it's easy to assign the same set of courses for everyone. So operationally, it becomes easier. But I do have the thought process that this is going to change in the future because Now that with the AI, every individual has an opportunity in a good software, they can have their personalized career planning, personalized learning plan. So once you have your personalized learning plan, you can say, okay, I'm here, I want to be here, and this is the timeline. So let me frame my courses I want to take. That will take me from here to where I want to be. So now the toolkits have gotten better. And with the induction of AI can pull many things in, and we can give you a more comprehensive set of stuff that you can take, right? So things, I hope, in the next 3 to 5 years will get much better than where they have been. The other piece is big corporations, what they have done is, okay, I buy X number of courses, right? In thousands or hundreds or whatever. I don't know what you want. You pick whatever you want. There is no guidance to employees. Either they have everybody take the same, or they let the employee choose. It's like, employees now struggle to figure out what is that they should take, or how should they frame their career plan, and how and what they should take the courses to get to the next level. So once again, coming back, I think the AI is going to help us in this space. Of all the things, I think this is one of the promising ones where there can be a solution to this. At this point, the solution is not there. I have seen more of many, many, many clients selecting same set of content across the board. Yeah. We are shocked as to why they do, but they do all the time.
And it's funny, we've been talking about, the personalization of learning for a long time. That was the conversation long before AI actually became in the conversation, although AI is going to be a big driver of that. But one of the things that I thought when the AI conversation began that I thought was, this is really great potential. I know there's all these super pie in the sky things that we want to do with AI, but early on I thought, here's something tangible that I think would be great. And the idea of personalizing learning, it could be a daunting concept and to go that far, but all we really need to start with, if you're going to start this journey, if you haven't started, the place to start is leveraging tools now, like with AI, makes it even easier to eliminate irrelevant and redundant content first, right?
Yes.
Just by doing that, you've already personalized the learning and made it relevant. It isn't so much, I have to figure out exactly what this person wants and needs. If you first eliminate what they don't need, learning just becomes and feels more relevant and contextual, because I'm not seeing this material that I already know, that I'm already certified in. I'm not seeing the stuff that has nothing to do with my role or my job or my goals. Just the absence of that has already elevated the learning experience to feeling more relevant, to feeling more personalized.
Yes, that is true. That is right. So true.
And then you can go from there. Then you can start to add in the more, and here's this tailor-made career path, and here's all the things you need to get there. That's right. But if we start there, even from a place of compliance, I was just talking to folks about compliance training, and it feels like something that people don't ever want to touch. We can't mess with compliance training. It has to be this way, and it has to fit these things. But the reality is companies are seeing such huge success by saying, here, if you just answer these questions, then you don't need this training, right? We know that you have that competency, you have that skill, whatever it is, without just being, it's compliance, you have to take it. People get way more engaged. They're way more, they're quicker to pick up on things that they are more strategic, makes their overall experience that much better. And it's so much easier on the learning team, right? It seems like it would be easier just to dump everything on everyone. But ultimately, it makes your job easier if you've got the tools to allow you to give people what they need and what they want.
Yes. And what you said about compliance training is so true, right? People are afraid of touching it. So they say, okay, this is what you got to take, not realizing whether it's relevant or not. So they're afraid of touching it, especially with compliance.
All right. So moving on to number 6 in our Hall of Shame here. We're just going to circle back a little bit into the performance area and how do we recognize performance. And this is an old issue that is almost now a punchline to a joke, right? The idea of how do we recognize really great performers, and in as far as at least promotion goes, right? The old story is you're the greatest software developer we have in this company, and you've maxed out at your compensation level. So we're going to make you a manager, someone who's never managed people before and now doesn't get to do the job that they're really, really good at all that much anymore. And it seems super counterintuitive, but we do it all
the time. Yes. And I think the progressive companies, especially in Valley, has created some level of solution to this problem, but the mistake that organizations make all the time is it's not a question of promoting the high performers. The mistake is promoting them without preparing them for a fundamentally a different job. So it's a different job. Being excellent in role that you are in doesn't mean you will achieve the same level of success in the next role that you are going to have. So you might be a great sales guy, and if you might be doing very well, and like if you become a sales manager, then you may not be the right candidate to be a sales manager because the skill set needed is going to be different, could be different, right? And neither the candidate nor the organization realize that it requires a different skill set from what that person had before. And if they are not prepared for that, and that's going to be a big problem for this, right? Every function you have similar situation, right? A guy who is going to be promoted, if he's blindly promoted without giving the proper toolkit or getting him trained and all that, it's going to be a problem. And that happens all the time. I think there are solutions happening. I have seen in Valley, in many places where they create that if you don't want to be in let's say there are multiple tracks. You are in a track where you are performing well and you want to be in the same track. They are creating that career opportunity for a person in that track to progress so that he feels he's being promoted, but at the same time, he's doing the role that he was doing before, but more in a senior level. So that kind of gives him the confidence to exceed or do very well. That also creates longevity for the employee to be in the organization. Now, if you promote a wrong guy and he becomes a poor manager, then you are in deep trouble. And that happens because the way the organizations do the promotion process is an issue. It happens in all verticals, all areas. It's just that because companies are not able to think through. And that also means the candidate or employee not investing enough time in their career path in designing, okay, I want to be a manager. I need to build my career towards it, learning towards it, right? It comes back to career pathing. It comes back to your customized, personalized learning. If none of these things happen, then just because you want to be promoted, you go into a job that you are not interested in, or you are not suitable, then you are lost. Your job already has been given to someone else. Now you are in a job that you are not capable of doing. We have seen people leaving the firm because they are not in the right spot.
Yeah, and that somebody that could have been super valuable in the right position. I think one way that companies are alleviating this issue somewhat, and I've seen over the years, is this more democratized approach to leadership development, right? So the kind of skills, the big critical skills that we focus so much on for leaders, executives, things like that. Companies are realizing, those might be helpful all across the organization, regardless of level or role. So they're starting to promote more leadership development type programs, things that develop these kinds of skills, like, managing people, difficult conversations, emotional intelligence, critical thinking, all of those things for any employee that is interested and shows interest. And what that does is early on highlights people who have those capabilities or an affinity for them, right? They start to show that, this is coming out in the work that they're doing through the learning and development. They're showing an affinity for it. And now, long before you decide, okay, this person needs to be a manager because we have we don't know what to do with them, you have a history of whether or not that's a good move. And is that person prepared for that? And all along the way, you've helped the organization because those skills are important for everyone to have everywhere you can. And so instead of waiting until someone's at that level of, okay, well, we made you manager, so now here's all the leadership development training, all this stuff you've never thought about before. Here it is all now. It's a little late in the game to try to make somebody a great leader at that stage.
Yeah, that is.
So let's wrap it up with sort of the big one, the final mistake. And this is one that at first blush, almost, I think people might say doesn't sound like a mistake. They wouldn't think it is, and that they're managing by gut feel. But it's not just that you're managing by gut feel. It's managing everything by gut feel instead of using proper workforce intelligence. What do you see with this?
Yes, one of the problems that we have is that when you make your decisions based on your gut feel, if you go back to the prior mistake we talked about, you have a gut feel this guy can be a good sales manager type without any analysis of whether the person is going to be capable of doing it and all that, then you are not having any analytical framework for you to do it, right? So there are lots of toolkits. There are lots of ways you can prepare your own organization and the candidate to do it. Like, you have assessment tools that can assess whether the particular person can be a right fit for that role, right? So there is a succession planning process that can be done that will help the organizations. It can also be a career pathing, career planning by employees and by the organization to say, okay, it's going to take some time, X number of months or years for you to get there, and this is the path. But what happens most of the time is it is a shotgun approach where they just make a decision because this person did this in this function. So we will be able to have this person do this role. Not necessarily it works that way. So even now, I think many times the decisions are made in the gut feel or the manager's subjective decision making rather than workforce intelligence. By workforce intelligence, a combination of analytical data, succession planning data, and the assessment of the employee and their performance on some of the attributes and the training towards those attributes that they are aiming for. None of them by itself are going to help, but collectively that gives a framework for organization to say, okay, based on all the decisions or all information we have right now, what is the best way for us to approach? And this will give them some level of quantifiable data that will help them in the decision making. But is it easy to do? Answer is no. And so we still are living in a world where a lot of gut-based decision making is going on right now. So so this is a problem. It is very difficult to solve because it takes a lot of effort.
Yeah. And I think, like I was saying at the top of this one, I think a lot of leaders might take pride in the fact that they manage, lead with their gut feeling, and maybe they're right more often than they're wrong. But at the end of the day, you have to take stock of yourself as an HR leader, and this is what you want to do, with your talent is, okay, so you're going with your gut. What informs that, right? Like something has informed your gut feeling over the course of your life, and do you have all the information that's available? And is it based on, we talk about AI, right, in this same conversation. And one of the challenges AI has faced is, well, it's only as smart as all the stuff that it's looked at that's previously happened. And if you feed it a bunch of either biased or incorrect information, well, then that's what you're going to get. So if over the years your gut has been informed by the way things had been done or the way that, the company believed that it should be done, that's what your gut's going to tell you. And that might not be enough. Now, if you do the things that you're talking about, inform your gut feeling with the data, with the analytics, with the right tools, then that just makes, your gut feeling that much more reliable, right?
Really?
And then it'll prove you right more often down the road, and people will take you even more seriously as the more right that you are. But I think it also, coming back to the AI thing, it's so important that you have faith and confidence in your gut feelings, because AI, at this stage anyway, requires a lot of gut checks, right? Like, this is what AI has come up with. This is what it says. I need someone to look at this and say yes or no. This is, reality. This is what we should do. And if, you're doing that without all of the information that you could possibly have, then you're doing yourself a disservice.
Yes. The last piece in that is when you start having only a gut-based decision-making, then you are disenfranchising many employees in the process, right? So they don't know why you made what you made as a decision and what was the rationale. And so you kind of lost out employees who did not get what they thought they would get or any one of those possible options. And if there are 5 candidates who could have been promoted, you promoted somebody with your gut feel, then the remaining 4 are going to be disappointed because there is no rational explanation that you can give as to why you made that decision, right? That creates a whole loop of problem and like people leaving and all that stuff.
Yeah. So, look, that was 7 things on our list, the Hall of Shame list. That's not to say that this list could not be longer. I'm sure anybody listening is probably like, oh, what about this? What about that? And if you ever want to reach out to either Mahesh or myself and add to this list, we'd love to, because we know that they're out there. But again, this isn't supposed to be a doom and gloom look at things. I think, as we went through these, I'm sure a lot of folks have recognized themselves or their organization in a lot of these. And there's a reason why they made this list, right? Is because they persist. And but it's just up to us to really look at these things head on and be honest about them and start to try to move away and start to do things differently, right? I mean, it isn't, this is not meant to, even though it's called the Hall of Shame, we're not trying to shame anybody.
Yeah. We know that, it's just we need to help ourselves.
Yeah. So, Mahesh, I really appreciate you walking through these with us. I mean, I don't want to say that it was enjoyable to cultivate this list, because it's a little heartbreaking sometimes, but it's the reality. And, we know that everyone has good intentions, and it's just really trying to break some of the old habits that are just entrenched in HCM.
Yes.
So thanks for sharing your insights today, and thanks for walking through this list with me. And we hope to connect with everybody on another podcast soon. So thanks.
Thank you.